Hey, great job. Thank you. Thank you, Meg, very much. Let's see. So we can start the questions, or we could start the webinar over. You could give the presentation again, so we get it again. I'm just kidding. You'll get a recording, so you'll be able to watch it at your leisure and take it all in. Okay, so the first question I see is, how does the surface in which you temper affect the process? Is tile okay?
Yeah, so you want to avoid any surface with a texture. Um, Mostly because that's going to be a bitch to clean. Um, you don't want anything that's like uneven, because your chocolate's going to get stuck. So that's another good reason why just buying a flat sheet pan is a good way to go. Um, The other thing is the sheet pan has a lip, so the chocolate's not going to go over and onto your counter. Um, yeah, I would have, that's, you're going to cry if you start tempering on a tiled surface. Like in Canada, you can buy a sheet pan for like $20 and they're huge. Um, Avoid textured surfaces. You're just going to cry and then you're going to be spending hours trying to get chocolate off of your counter.
Okay. Let's see. What is the optimal mold temperature for molding tempered chocolate to prevent tempering and setting problems?
Okay, so this depends on your percentage of chocolate because the, when you go back in the presentation, that 𝗲𝗺 temperature chart, screenshot it, or you can go to 𝗲𝗺's website, print off their sheet. I have a printable sheet on my website as well. Um, it's going to depend. In general, for dark chocolate, it needs to be below body temperature. So body heat is around 32, 33 degrees Celsius. Dark chocolate needs to hit around 30, 31 degrees Celsius. Otherwise, you're going to get bloom and streaks. For milk chocolate, in general, you want to do about 2 degrees cooler, so around 27, 28 degrees or 28, 29 degrees for milk chocolate, and then white chocolate's around 27. But again, depending on the percentage you're using, like an 88, you can probably temper a little higher than you would a 70. So find a chocolate you really like. Um, a lot of the brands will actually have the temperature on the package. They will tell you they did the work for you. Especially if you're buying like 𝗲𝗺 or Cocoa Berry on the side of the bag, it'll say temper to 30.8 degrees Celsius. They give you the exact number. If you're doing it for craft chocolate, there is going to be like a little bit of experimentation of do because that half a degree does make a difference. So if you're practicing, buy the brands that give you that information already. Otherwise, it like unfortunately, trial and error does involve trial and error.
Okay, I want to jump around a little bit. Um, One of the questions is, what is, oh, wait a minute, I lost it. It was a good question. Okay, well, basically, the question was, without reading it, was what are some of the common mistakes that people use with the sheet pan tempering method when they're just starting out?
Um, so people don't do too, so one of the mistakes people use the most, if you're melting your chocolate on a bain-marie, there's a lot of condensation that builds on the bottom of your bowl. The number one enemy of chocolate is moisture. Any sort of drop of water or whisper of moisture that's around chocolate will cause your chocolate to seize. And what happens is people will take their chocolate, bring it over to the sheet pan, and the water will drip onto the pan and then they pour their chocolate on top of that. So I go over this in the videos that are linked. You really want to make sure you get into the habit of wiping your bowl before you bring it over to your workspace. Anything you use in chocolate needs to be bone dry. Like have a rag, paper towel in arm's reach at all times.
Great. Okay. What are the critical temperature stages in your method and how precise do they need to be?
Yeah, so again, this goes back to the type of chocolate you're using. I use 𝗬𝗁 for the most part in my videos. Um, you have a window of error of about 1 degree. Anything more than that, you're gonna have some issues. Um, this is why having a working thermometer is key. And check your temperatures. Like you need to check. It's kind of like it's like being in if you do yoga, the thing in yoga they keep telling you to do is breathe because people forget to breathe. You need to breathe and control your breathing through the whole process of practicing yoga. It's the same with chocolate. You need to get into the practice and consistency of checking your temperatures. Because if you don't, in yoga, if you don't breathe, you'll pass out. In chocolate, your chocolate will seize, it will misbehave. Um, Especially if it's a chocolate, like a craft maker knows their chocolate really well. And if they tell you you need to temper it at 29.7 degrees, temper it to 29.7 degrees. They know what they're talking about. Um, again, there is that 1 degree kind of window you can play around um, with 𝗬𝗁, because it's higher in fat, you might have a little more wiggle room, but it is a practice in following the directions. It's not like cooking, there's no saving it. You have to follow the directions.
Okay, so what are the main visual or tactile signs that tell you the chocolate is perfectly tempered using your method?
Okay, so you will see this when you do it. Chocolate gets thicker when it gets into temper. When chocolate is melted, it's super fluid and very shiny. And then when you go to pour it, it's a very thin stream of chocolate. When chocolate is in temper, you can put a line through the chocolate and it's very slow to come back together. That is a good sign that chocolate is in temper. If you're tempering your chocolate and you go to put a line through it with your spatula or whatever, and it's not really moving, that means it's over temper and it's going to set quicker than you want it to. Um, so yeah, you'll see it as you move it around. It'll start to slow down and you'll be like, okay, this is getting into temper. It's getting cooler now. And then it will kind of turn dull if it goes into over temper. But that takes practice.
So it won't be shiny.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a lot of questions. It's great. How do you adjust the method for different types of chocolate? Milk chocolate, dark chocolate, white chocolate? Do you modify temperatures, timing, thickness, and or thickness on the pan?
Okay, no, it's exactly the same for every type of chocolate. The steps are exactly the same. The only thing that changes is how far are you cooling it. So because there is more cacao butter in a milk chocolate, you need to cool it further. But the actual process of doing it is exactly the same. There is no change in the steps. So instead of tempering it to 30 degrees for a dark chocolate, you're cooling it down to 28 degrees for a milk chocolate. That is the only difference.
Okay, so if chocolate loses temper, becomes dull or streaky, can it be retempered using the same pan method, or does it need to be completely remelted?
Yes, you need to remelt it, but that's with any method you use. Like what tempering is cooling chocolate down. If you cool it down too far, you need to remelt it. Good news is dark garbage. It's not trash. Untempered chocolates still taste good. But yes, you do need to remelt it. If it's too cool in the pan, what you can do is just warm it up in the pan. Um, this might be controversial. So if you see in professional kitchens, they have warming drawers or they have a cabinet that's like a heated cabinet. I don't own one of those. What I do own is an oven with an oven light. I don't turn the oven on, I just leave the light on, and that is enough heat generated by the light bulb of your oven to remelt the chocolate off of your pan. It's a little home hack for you.
How do ambient temperatures, room temperature, humidity, airflow affect the success of this method?
It affects it a lot. So I live in Vancouver, British Columbia, so we are a higher elevation. Um, my chocolate tempers really fast because of that. If you are in a humid climate, um, moisture might get into your chocolate. If you live in a very humid, so I have family in Malaysia, I get a dehumidifier for the room I'm working with chocolate in. Even here in Canada, in the summer months, we will temper our chocolate 1 degree cooler in the summer than we do in the winter. There's more moisture in the air, and the ambient temperature is just warmer. In the winter, it's very dry and very cold, so we don't need to temper it as low. We can go a little higher because as we're working with it, it will continue to cool. Again, it is a practice thing. You need to know your space and you need to know your chocolate. Um, as I said, trial and error requires trial and error.
Yes. Okay, let's see. And if anyone would like to use the raise hand feature, I, I, I don't know if it's getting boring just hearing me read the questions. If you want to raise hand feature and come in and ask your question, we would love to do that as well. In the meantime, let's see. Yeah, look, there's Mrs. Balu. Perfect timing.
Good.
You have a
Just
question?
yeah, I just wanted to know, somebody asked if there any way you can share the link for the video so we can put it in the chat and people can copy it. You said they can order it.
Yes.
They have to send the email to you, or can you share it now?
Oh yeah, let me copy that and I'll put it in the chat.
Okay. And also somebody else asked, like, do you give a master class and how do they get a master class from you?
Um, so for the masterclass, yes, you can message me on Instagram or go directly to my website. So everything's very easy for me. Everything's under meaganlarmont.com. Or my Instagram is Meagan Larmont. I'm the only Meagan Larmont in existence. Um, so let's copy this. So if you're interested in learning that method, I've posted it in the chat. I will be posting some videos to YouTube as well. Again, everything is just under my name. It's very easy. Um, I'm always looking for people, especially people who are new to chocolate, to find out what their struggles are and to find the easiest way of teaching that. Um, so yeah, and there's lots of other stuff on my website as well, just about chocolate in general.
Yeah, somebody's asking, like the Martin is asking, does leaving the mold in the fridge to cool for too long affect the temper or quality?
So it won't affect your temper. It might affect the quality because again, it's moisture. You don't want any moisture to build up on your chocolate, even when it's in temper. So when you put it in your, like chocolate makers will have a fridge, but it's called a setting fridge. And that fridge is set to a much higher temperature than like an average fridge is. Um, your home fridge is around 4 degrees Celsius to keep things safe. A setting fridge is usually set to around 12 to 14 degrees Celsius. Um, if you leave your chocolate in the fridge too long, moisture will build up, and then that invites mold to grow. So you don't want to do that. So I tell people don't leave your chocolate in the fridge any longer than 10, 15 minutes. A good way of doing it is allow your chocolate to set on your counter for around 10 to 15 minutes, move it to your fridge for 10 to 15 minutes, and then you should be good. Um, yeah, you just don't want any like, because tackiness will start as well if you leave it in your fridge too long. And mold is just that you don't want that. That's gross. So yeah, uh, you, I would set 5 minute timers and check it every 5 minutes if you're doing it in your fridge at home. Because yeah, moisture will just ruin everything.
Yeah, the other important point you told us before putting in the fridge, they have to, cool it down in the room temperature instead of putting in the fridge. The
Yeah,
other reason is like if you put it in the mold, immediately you put in the fridge, what happens is the top of the chocolate solidifies first, and inside it the chocolate is still hot because we high heated it and cooled it. Then when the
yeah,
heat comes out, it makes the channels because the heat migrates to the top. Then when you
yeah.
break the chocolate piece, it'll be crumbly inside. It'll be like,
Yeah, you also want to invest in a good mold. That's molds you don't want to use anything super cheap. You want to use a mold that's made of polycarbonate because that plastic is designed to cool evenly, where with other types of plastic, you'll get hot spots. And so some of your chocolate might be perfectly in temper and other areas will be out of temper. So like invest in a good mold because those molds will last you forever. I have molds that are like 15 years old and they're totally fine. So invest in a good mold.
hmm. Yeah, somebody is asking, like, what? No, I think if any of you, the participants, if you want to, ask the question yourself, come on video, raise hands. But right now, they're just typing it in so I can read this.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you consider the key moment in the process, the point where success or failure is determined? Do you see any failure innovations or variations? Sorry, do you see any future innovations or variations that could make tempering even easier and more sustainable? What kind of results have surprised you most from people who have tried your course or method? So there's like three questions from them. So you want
Okay.
one question at
Um,
first?
so the first question is um future advancements in tempering. Um, so for that question, it comes back to automation. That's when you're investing in equipment. Um, but as I said, equipment can fail, equipment can break. So if you don't know how to temper, then you're kind of stuck and you can't produce anything until that machine is fixed. Um, with um So in cooking, we call it molecular gastronomy. And that's when we're adding chemicals or powders that are derived from plants to dishes to develop a certain outcome. So there's powders that can make things more foamy. There's powders that can make things thicker. There's powders that can make things shinier. Um, the problem with adding a lot of these powders is one, people have been proven to get sick from consuming too much of it. Um, and two, chocolate has all of the ingredients it already needs to be successful. Um, the thing with craft makers in particular, a lot of them don't add emulsifiers, they don't add stabilizers because you do not need them. I don't have a huge issue with them. Um, because chocolate is a fermented product, it already lasts forever, unless you're adding milk and that sort of thing. Um, we kind of forget that innovation isn't always better. And chocolate is one of those things where you don't really need to mess with it too much. Um, if you want to become more efficient in your tempering, you need to move to automation. That is an investment you need to decide for yourself. What was the other question?
What kind of results have surprised you most from people who have tried your course or method?
Okay, so I think once people start, they're like, oh, okay, this wasn't as hard as I thought it was. And that is the truth. Tempering is not that hard. Um, People get overwhelmed because chocolate's expensive. But as I said, you can always melt it down and start again. Um, in most of my, not most, all of my workshops, people always walk away with a finished product that they're proud of. Are the edges not super clean? Do they maybe have an air bubble in it? Sure. But at the end of the day, they are walking away with smooth, shiny chocolate.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing here about the equipment. I understand. See, equipment is only a tool. Still, you need
Yeah,
to understand the basic of the chocolate making, whether it's grinding, roasting, tempering,
yeah,
anything. You need to know so that you can tweak the machine to bring the result you want. See, for example, we have a small tempering machine, the tabletop continuous tempering machine. But again, like Megan said, each chocolate percentage wise, how much cocoa butter it has, what kind of sugar you are using, everything affects the tempering. This is the temperature is only a basic guideline. So
yeah,
sometimes even if you do the use the machine, you need to know the principles so you can get the better results. So it's not like a
yeah,
magic, you just press a button and the chocolate comes out.
yeah. Even with the machines we use at work, as I said, depending on the time of year, we have to adjust the temperatures that we set it to because of the humidity or the temperature and all that sort of thing. So, so many pastry chefs I've worked with don't know anything about how chocolate is made. So doing like a beginner course in bean to bar chocolate is going to be super helpful and remove a lot of anxiety that can come with working with chocolate. Like go to a cacao farm, go to your local maker, like ask the questions.
Okay. Yeah, somebody is asking about the molds. How do you wash them or just dry polish the mold?
Okay, so for the sheet pan, you can just use hot water and mild soap. I just use Dawn dish soap. Just make sure you rinse things really well. And then microfiber cloth is your friend for removing any sort of like butter spots or like soap spots, that sort of thing. Um, when it comes to your molds, so some people will use like rubbing alcohol to clean their molds because it really gets rid of any residual cacao butter. other people will tell you to leave the cacao butter on there. They'll say just to warm the molds up with like a hair dryer and then use cotton swabs to evenly distribute that cacao butter because it can help maintain the mold and the shine of your chocolate. Um, I kind of do a combination of both. I will wash my molds, but I kind of only do it every kind of third or fourth batch. If I'm using like colors and things, I'll have to wash it. But it's a very mild soap because I don't want to strip the coating of the mold. And then microfiber cloth for me has always worked the best. I really struggled with cotton swabs. I really struggle with paper towel. Microfiber cloths. They work amazing on any sort of mold you could want.
Yeah, we don't recommend paper towels because those fibers, the plant fibers, they can
Yeah,
scratch the mold and, it can affect functionality of the mold. So, like you said, it has to be
yeah,
only a microfiber cloth or cotton, nothing
yeah.
else. Okay, then somebody's asking, what can I use? Okay. Oh, okay. Explain how to work with the tempered chocolate, like molding, cooling, and so on.
How do you mean?
I think he wants to know some steps on. It's not just after tempering, molding also is important. Like how long to cool, or is it
Okay.
put in the refrigerator or not, things like that. I think he wants you to explain again.
Um, so when you're molding, if your chocolate is in temper, and you did like a little temper test, like you took a spoon and you put the chocolate on it and you let it set, comes out shiny. Um, you should only need to mold if you're doing like a filled chocolate once. Um, the shell of a molded chocolate should be very thin. It shouldn't be really thick because when you go to bite into it, it's a pretty unpleasant experience. Um, so it should be very thin if you're doing like a casted filled chocolate. Um, if it's too thick, you have to start over because you won't get enough filling in there. And then it kind of makes for a pretty unpleasant eating experience because you're really having to like bite into that chocolate and then you only get a little bit of filling. Um, when you go to mold the chocolate, it shouldn't be pulling away from the mold either. If your chocolate is pulling away from the mold, it probably means you have moisture. Um, another issue, if you're decorating your molds with like cacao butter, you got to make sure that butter has completely set before you add chocolate on top of that. If you're putting warm chocolate onto wet cacao butter color, it's going to pull away from the mold. Your design's not going to turn out and it's going to look like shit. Um, if your chocolate's in temper, you should just be. Um, the other thing is, which you'll see if you decide to take my course, is that you really got to tap out your mold. You really got to like really shake out the excess chocolate. You can't just let it sit in there. You literally fill the mold, turn it over, give it a good shake, and really like scrape the excess. Again, it's a practice in patience and just making sure you're concentrating on each step. Um, it is practice, guys. I like, I don't know. It is practice.
Okay, somebody is asking what they can use as an emulsifier besides oil as the thing.
Um, Cacao butter. Cacao butter is a great emulsifier. So the silk I was telling you before, you can just buy cacao butter. You guys know like those Parmesan graters that you see in like Italian restaurants? You can put it in one of those and grate it to a really fine powder. So you can add that to your chocolate at that 2 to 3 degrees before it's in temper, and it'll melt and it will add those additional crystal structures. I know some people are using sunflower lecithin to avoid allergies. The problem with using those emulsifiers, though, is that it can leave a really weird film on your tongue, and it's got a little bit of an aftertaste. I really don't think you need it. My opinion is just don't use it. Um, if you've made the chocolate well, like you're grinding it, you're melanging it, you're keeping the chocolate in temper, you don't need it. We don't use it at 𝗬𝗃. We use 0 emulsifiers at 𝗬𝗃, and our chocolate has a 2-year shelf life. Like you really don't need it. Like just don't. And it's additional costs as well. You're spending more money. Like just I would avoid it. If you really want to, I think the industry standard is you use 1% of the total weight. I just wouldn't use it.
And one myth or misconception about tempering that you wish more people understood.
It's a good question. I guess it is that people think when I'm talking about crystals, I'm talking about sugar. It's hard for people because you associate sugar as in sugar crystals. We are talking about fats, and all tempering is cooling chocolate down. That's it. That's all it is. People think it's some like you need like a degree in chemistry to temper chocolate. You don't. You're just cooling it down. That's all you're doing. Like we need to stop overthinking tempering. You're just cooling it down. So when it sets, it's an even color. That's it. That's all it is.
How do you stay inspired or keep experimenting with chocolate after mastering the science of it?
So that's very easy. So I'm very lucky that I live in a city like Vancouver. Um, it's 56% Asian here in Vancouver. So I am the minority here. Because of that, I have an access to so many ingredients from around the world that I get to play around with, and people who have deep and ingrained knowledge of those ingredients. Chocolate is when you think of chocolate, what do you think about? Chocolate touches most countries and cultures that you come across, and either you're growing it and cultivating it or you're producing it. It's everywhere. Chocolate is everywhere, and it has such a deep connection in most people. Like most people have had chocolate in their lives in some form of another, and it's integrated into their culture as well. So because of that, you have a lot to play around with. There's so many avenues you can go down with chocolate. You can go the super classic European route, or you can do what a lot of chocolate makers are doing, which is bringing that information back to the countries that grow it. A lot of farmers don't see a finished product of the chocolate that they grow. And to bring that back to the people who actually grow it, and then they can integrate more ingredients to the chocolate that they grow. So chocolate gets a lot of their flavor from fermentation. The flavor of fermentation can really depend on what they're fermenting it in. So farmers have a lot of power of how that chocolate flavor turns out. Because if they ferment it in mahogany wood, the chocolate's going to taste very different. If they ferment it in jackfruit wood, that chocolate is going to taste very different. They can start adding banana to the fermentation. They can add durian to the fermentation. And they can start make their own custom and patent blends of cacao beans. Like the farmers hold more power in the future of chocolate than they realize. And then when you bring that back to the maker, who can then educate people, it's like it's a lot. Like there's a lot to talk about and there's a lot to discover. Chocolate is a very under-researched plant. Compared to coffee, we are in the baby stages of understanding chocolate. So it is kind of like discovering new areas or discovering the ocean. Like there's just a lot.
Okay. How do you recommend cleaning and maintaining the pan to avoid contamination or inconsistent cooling?
Okay, one more time.
Sheet pan method. Your sheet pan method.
Yeah.
So they're asking, how do you clean and maintain the pan to avoid contamination or inconsistent cooling?
So my pan I only use for chocolate. I don't use it for anything else. That pan is dedicated to chocolate. So buy a new pan. Cleaning it, I just use hot, mild soap. Um, if I really need to, I'll use alcohol, and then I use non-abrasive sponge to clean it. The tools I use are all silicone, so you're not scratching it as you're tempering. Um, so it is just using soft materials. The great thing about chocolate is easy to clean because you just need heat. So the other thing you can do is stick the pan in your oven with the light on until the chocolate's melted and then just spray it off and then wipe it with a microfiber cloth. Like just it's so fast and it's contained, so it's not all over your counter, it's just in the pan. Um, so yeah, just using silicone, soft materials, and only use that pan for chocolate. Don't use one that you've like made a roast on.
So they're curious to know, how did you come with the sheet pan method? Is it an accident or were you trying to come up with a solution?
So my fiance is my brand manager, and he was asking the question. He's very good at asking questions. Um, I was doing a course where I was tempering on marble, and he asked, well, he's like, well, what if people don't have a marble slab? What should they use? And I was like, well, technically you could do it on stainless steel because all you're doing is spreading the chocolate out so you get a nice wide spread of temperature. Um, and he was the actual one being like, well, what if I just get a big sheet pan? Would that work? So really the credit goes to him because he was the one asking the question. And he's like, well, if I just apply that to what you just said, can I just buy a giant sheet pan? And I was like, well, yeah, you could. It's like the science works on both. So that's how that happened. So I have to give him the credit on that one.
Okay. Have you tested the pan thickness? Does it affect the cooling curve?
Yeah, so if you have a thicker pan, it will cool faster. The pan I use is not that thick. It's pretty thin. Um, though the pan I use is large, so you have the surface area. Um, so yes, it will make a difference. Basically, you just want the surface area. The surface area will cool it. I wouldn't worry about the thickness too much. The kind of joy of this is you don't have to think about it too much. Just buy a big sheet pan, call it a day.
And then can they use it in a tropical high altitude climate?
You can, yes, just as long as it's not too hot. Like, do you have air conditioning? And is it humid in your place? Because if it's 29 degrees in your apartment, you're not going to be tempering chocolate. That's not, no. Chocolate melts at 25 degrees. So don't, if you have air conditioning, yes, at a high altitude climate, you will be fine, but you need to have air conditioning.
Yeah. Can they replace this method in non-metal environments like using granite, ceramic, or food grade plastic?
Um, so ceramic I wouldn't recommend because ceramic really holds on to heat. That's why people use it in cooking and as serving dishes because it'll maintain heat. Granite is a great option because like marble, it will pull heat away. Um, the sheet pan, because it's aluminum, it heats and cools quickly, so it doesn't hold on to coolness as well as it doesn't hold on to heat. Um, yeah, you don't want to be using cast iron, you don't want to be using ceramic, you don't want to be using glass because those materials will hold on to heat for a really long time.
Yeah, they're also asking plastic. The plastic is same. It doesn't conduct heat, so it won't kill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then it's asking what's the optimal mold temperature to put the tempered chocolate into?
Room temperature.
Okay.
So you want to be using just ambient temperature on those. I know some chocolate makers will warm their molds a little bit. I think if you're just starting out, just room temperature molds. Don't put them in the fridge, don't warm them up, just use a room temperature mold. The key to molds is just that they're clean. Make sure they're clean.
Teresa?
Oh, I was hoping somebody might use the raise hand feature so we can
Yeah,
hear.
nobody has used it. I could, I tried, but people are shy to come. So I just tell everyone, see, you are all business owners. You should be, excuse me. So you should be feeling comfortable talking to strangers. That's how you grow your business. So think of this as a platform to train your skills because here is only friends. We are only like 20 people here, 25 people here. So, you should start talking more.
Kind of.
By the way, I used to have horrible stage fright. Horrible stage fright. And then I kind of forced myself into situations where I would have to do presentations. Like even before this, when I was nervous, but you get used to it. And now it's just second nature to present in front of people. And then just for Sita's question, yes, you can use a stainless steel table. It's the exact same thing as using a sheet pan. You don't need to when I teach workshops at Kasama, it's all stainless steel tables. We just do it right on the table. So yes.
I don't know if it's a dumb question, but I envisioned the back of the sheet pan. Is it the back of the sheet pan or the inside of the sheet pan?
So you can use either or. It's whatever you're comfortable with. So I like to use the inside because the lip will contain the chocolate. So when you go to spread it around, it's not going to get onto your counter or onto you, more importantly. But if you're more comfortable with using the back, use the back. There's no wrong answers here.
Not sure if I think we've got all the questions, except I do see one from Sita saying, if you reach type 6 crystals, can I go back to type 5 crystals?
Um, you can by using a hair dryer. So if if you're rewarming the chocolate on the table, you can use a hair dryer. It might come a little out of temper and then you just keep mixing it around. The other thing is if you've already transferred it into the bowl and it's gotten too cold, you reheat it over a bain-marie. So that's that working temperature is rewarming that chocolate, that's fine. As long as you don't go over, you're good.
Can you just really quick for those that may not have a culinary background, tell us what is a bain-marie?
So a bain-marie is just a metal bowl over a simmering pot of water. You don't want it to be boiling because you don't want a lot of steam coming up because that can get into your chocolate. It can also burn your chocolate if you do it that way. So all a bain-marie is like a pot of water with about 3 inches of water simmering, and then you put a stainless steel bowl on top of that for your chocolate to melt in. That's what a bain-marie is.
Got it. Let's see. Okay, here's an interesting question. Do you see potential to apply the sheet pan concept to other confections or fats beyond chocolate?
Yeah, so I have used it for like toffee making. If you've ever used saltwater toffee before, or any sort of like pulled sugar, it tends to work well. Though generally you need like a silicone mat to put on top of the sheet pan for those. Um, I've also used it for like, I don't love mess, so I used to do a lot of cake decorating with fondant. So I use the sheet pan to mix the fondant colors on, so I'm not getting it on other surfaces. It is just kind of like an additional space without needing a table to do kind of like messy, finicky work.
Okay. Alex asked, describe how to solidify the tempered chocolate.
Um, s- so all that means is to set your chocolate. So you can just make like chocolate bark. All chocolate bark is tempered chocolate in a thin sheet that you spread with a spatula and you throw your favorite things on. And then you have chocolate bark. Um, but you can use polycarbonate molds. Some people use like silicone molds. Um, those can be tricky because getting them out is a lot more difficult than a polycarbonate mold. Um, Also, you can take tempered chocolate and just dip some fruit in there, dip your pretzels in there. Like the tempered chocolate is just the tool for you to then finish your project. Unless you're using making a single origin bar.
Okay, I see a raised hand. So that's Alex. Alex, I have opened up the mic. So you can unmute yourself and come in with your question or comment. Okay. Alex, are you able to unmute yourself? All right. In the meantime, looks like we have a question. Do you have a patent on your method? Tell us about that patent. And if so, tell us about the patent.
Okay, can you
Um,
hear me now?
Oh, give one quick second, Alex, and we'll get right back to you.
so my method is trademarked. It was just done under like a Canadian trademark. It's not trademarked under like an international thing, but like it is just something to tie to my name. Just so when people it's a branding concept, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Okay, Alex, come on in.
Okay, so my question is like after pouring the tempered chocolate into the molds, how do I solidify it exactly? How long can I leave it out at room temperature? At what temperature does it have to go into the fridge to solidify? And my
Okay,
special question is if I pour like big molds, like 1 kilogram, and I put them into the fridge. It's kind of like it untempers in the fridge. Is that what? Because I'm cooling it down too slow?
so tempered chocolate will set at room temperature. Um, Putting it in the fridge just speeds up the process. So when you put your chocolate in your molds, I think we've mentioned this before, you're gonna want to allow it to set at room temperature for like 15 to 20 minutes just on a flat counter. Just leave it just until you kind of get that matte finish on the back of your chocolate. Once you've reached that point, you can then put it into your setting fridge. Now, your setting fridge should be set at a much higher temperature than like a typical fridge because you don't want moisture to build. A setting fridge is usually set between 10 degrees Celsius and 14 degrees Celsius. And you're only putting it in there long enough to set your chocolate. Now you can tell that if you're using clear molds, you can tell that your chocolate is set by looking at the bottom side of your mold. If your chocolate doesn't have any like dark spots showing up on the mold, that means your chocolate has completely set and you want to remove it from your fridge. If you're still seeing like dark spots, that means you still have unset chocolate in your mold. And then when you remove it from the fridge, you usually want to leave it for another 5 minutes just for that coolness to evaporate in case there's any moisture buildup, and then you can unmold your chocolate. I think what was mentioned before is if you put your chocolate in the fridge right after pouring it into your mold, you're going to have your chocolate cooling too fast on top and then not cooling at all at the bottom. And so you're going to have layers of tempered chocolate and untempered chocolate in your mold if you put it in directly after you fill it. Does that make sense?
Okay, so what's room temperature for you? How many degrees?
So like 20 degrees.
20 degrees, okay. And
20 degrees Celsius.
Celsius, yeah.
Not Fahrenheit, okay. And then, so kind of like, it is not necessary to put the tempered, after molding the tempered chocolate, is not necessary to put it into the fridge to solidify it.
You don't have to, but it's going to take a lot longer if you don't. But it's not like necessary. So when I temper at home, I have like my regular fridge I use for cooking. I will let my chocolate set on my counter for a good 10 minutes, and then I only put it in my fridge for like 5 minutes just to like really harden that chocolate, and then I take it out. But it's not necessary because your chocolate will eventually set. It will just take a long time.
Okay, and because I experience it kind of like untempers if I have it out at room temperature too long. I mean, I can see it, in the tempering machine or in the bowl, in the bowl, whatever, where the tempered chocolate is, kind of like it untempers. If I just, if I see it, take a look at the dirty mold, or at the empty, kind of empty bowl, the chocolate always untempers.
Alex, the place where you are, does it have too much humidity or is it too hot? And are you in Hawaii,
We're in
right?
Hawaii. It's
So
always hot.
yeah, so she was saying, right, the tempering room should always be cool, and we know you should have the dehumidifier because I know Hawaii is hot and humid. So if you adjust the room temperature, you won't have that problem.
Okay. Okay, good to know. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alex. So we have just about 5 minutes left. And we want to be honoring of Meg's time and all of your time. I see one last question maybe from Patricia. And she says, you shared that you've gone through multiple open heart surgeries, an incredibly challenging and transformative experience. If you could summarize the connection between your personal healing journey and your innovation in the sheet pan method, what would that connection be for you? Very personal and interesting question.
So, yeah, I loved being a chef and I loved working in Michelin kitchens. When I went through my last heart surgery and was told that I needed to change my lifestyle if I wanted to continue living a long and healthy life, I went through a huge identity crisis because everything I thought I was and what I had accomplished had been through working in fine dining kitchens. What chocolate has allowed me to do is to stay in that culinary space, but then to turn it into more of a meditative practice. So I've reduced my stress. Um, and what I wanted to show people through that experience is that chocolate doesn't need to be this stressful experience. It can be a moment in your day where you can just slow down while at the same time making something delicious and have a skill that very few people have. Um, I love food and I love what food does to us as a people and a culture. And chocolate being one of those things that people seem to think is so scary. I'm just like, no, like it does just force you to stop, breathe, pay attention, and just allow yourself to just focus on that one thing when the world is constantly telling us we need to be doing 500 million things at once.
Beautiful, thank you. I love these webinars and how not only do they give me chocolate related lessons or business related lessons, but I always find a life lesson in there. So thank you for sharing that. I think we'll close with just a couple of comments. Many thanks, Meagan, for a very informative class. Good health to you. Thank you so much, Meagan, Teresa, Mrs. 𝗬𝗠, and CocoaTown. Your passion for chocolate, creativity, and teaching has been so motivated. I'm leaving this session both inspired and grateful.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be talking about chocolate.
Thank you for the presentation. It was very informative and beneficial. Wonderful. Okay. So we're right at the top of the hour. Mrs. 𝗬𝗠, do you have a parting word? You're muted, Mrs. 𝗬𝗠.
Thanks, Teresa. Yeah, like I said in the before, like unless you participate, these webinars don't have any meaning. So thank you for all the participants and thank you, Meagan. And not just talking about tempering, but also inspiring people. Like the life throws a curveball, but how you handle is what makes you different, right? So we all have challenges. Sometimes we just stressed out by the challenge, but this shows, your life shows you can convert the challenge into something that benefits the community, right? You pivoted not in your business but also in your personal life, and you're helping so many people. So that's a big lesson for all the chocolate, the entrepreneurs, because in business, in health, in personal life, a lot of things can happen, but please handle it right. And don't be stressful. Chocolate, no, eat chocolate when you're stressful. It calms you down, and it helps the farmers when you eat the chocolate because they get more money than, when chocolate makers buy the chocolates. So thank you for giving us an opportunity to bring these webinars. Thank you, Meagan. Thank you, all the participants. Thank you, Teresa, because Teresa is the backbone of this, the empowering chocolate produce from the beginning. So thank you all, and Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Have a good day and good weekend.
I think on that note, unless Meagan, you have one last parting word, we'll close her up.
Just happy Diwali to anyone who's celebrating this weekend. Eat lots of good food. Hug everybody. That's
Yeah.
it.
All right, wonderful. Okay, thanks everybody. Bye.